The announcer's voice echoed off the gilded walls of the Royal Albert Hall, cutting through the hushed anticipation like a stone dropped into still water. Ladies and gentlemen, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. The red velvet curtains parted, and there they stood, William and Kate, poised at the threshold of the most glamorous night in the British film calendar. It was February 2019, and the BAFTAs were in full swing, but inside the venue something felt distinctly off. As the couple stepped forward into the vast auditorium, a wave of silence washed over them. This was not the usual hum of chatter and clinking glasses that preceded a major awards show. This was absolute, deafening quiet. The celebrity-filled crowd, seated in neat rows, rose to their feet out of respect, but not a single hand clapped. No music played. The only sound was the soft rustle of fabric and the gentle click of Kate's heels against the floor. For any public figure, walking into a room of 2,000 people in complete silence would be unnerving. For a royal, it was unprecedented. The couple had arrived outside to the usual screams and flashes of paparazzi, but the interior of the Royal Albert Hall felt like a library during a moment of silence. Kate, resplendent in a one-shouldered white Alexander McQueen gown, kept her composure, her face a mask of practiced elegance. But as they moved toward their seats, the silence grew heavier, almost suffocating. William leaned into the moment with his characteristic dry humor. "Let's sit quickly," he whispered to his wife, a slight grin playing on his lips. "It's a quiet room." Kate could not help but laugh softly, and the sound a sharp contrast to the surrounding stillness. She turned to a girl seated behind them and admitted, "It's so quiet." Leaning around her husband, she repeated the observation to BAFTA Chief Executive Amanda Berry, shaking her head slightly in amused disbelief. "It's so quiet." Later, social media would explode with reactions. Fans compared the entrance to walking into a funeral, wondering why the royals were met with such an eerie lack of fanfare. Some suggested the silence was simply everyone being stunned by Kate's beauty, a tribute to her stunning appearance. But for William and Kate, it was a moment of shared awkwardness, a bubble of private humor in a very public setting. What the cameras captured, however, was more than just an awkward entrance. It was a snapshot of a partnership. In the face of potential embarrassment, they turned to each other. They laughed together, whispered together, and navigated the moment as a unit. It was this unspoken bond that would be tested time and again in the years to come, though no one in that room could have predicted just how severe those tests would be. Fast forward 7 years. The venue had changed to the Royal Festival Hall, and the stakes were infinitely higher. It was February 2026, and the Prince and Princess of Wales were making their first major joint public appearance since a family crisis had rocked the monarchy to its core. The arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had sent shockwaves through the royal family, and all eyes were on William and Kate. The world wanted to see if they were cracking under the pressure. Kate stepped onto the red carpet in a breathtaking custom Gucci chiffon dress in soft lilac, paired with a burgundy velvet belt. William matched her in a sophisticated burgundy dinner jacket. They looked the picture of A-list glamour, easily upstaging the Hollywood stars like Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet who mingled nearby. But beneath the surface, trained observers noticed subtle signs of tension. Body language expert Judy James watched the footage closely. She noted that while the couple's arms hung loose at their sides, a sign of assertive confidence, William's right hand betrayed him with a slight, anxious fidgeting of the fingers. His hair and beard were trimmed closer than usual, a more fashionable look, but when they smiled for the cameras, there was a hint of edge-to-edge teeth clenching. It was not a look of pure relaxation. It was a look of resolute determination. A lip reader, Jeremy Freeman, decoded the private exchanges happening in plain sight. As they worked the red carpet, Kate gently guided her husband, pointing and saying, "Look at the people. before calling out a cheerful, "Hey!" to the crowd. William, ever the protector, kept his focus on her safety, murmuring, "Watch your step," as they navigated the cables and curbs. Inside the venue, away from the flashing lights, the guard slipped further. William, known for his stiff upper lip, admitted to something rare: vulnerability. When asked if he had seen the emotionally powerful film Hamnet, a tragic story about Shakespeare's son and the grief of parenthood, he shook his head. Kate interjected, revealing she had watched it the night before and ended up in floods of tears. She praised the film's presentation of intergenerational grief, admitting it was perhaps a bad idea to watch it right before a public event. But William's reason for skipping the film was what truly broke hearts. "I need to be in quite a calm state," he explained, his voice measured, "and I am not at the moment. I will save it." In that single sentence, the future king acknowledged the turmoil behind the scenes. He was not feeling calm. The weight of family scandal, the scrutiny of the world, and the pressure of his future role were pressing down on him. Yet, there he was, fulfilling his duties as president of BAFTA, presenting an award to Dame Donna Langley, and speaking of the importance of the creative industries with practiced eloquence. Kate, I too, showed the strain in her own way. When a heckler in the crowd shouted, asking if the monarchy was in peril, William brushed it off with calm confidence. But the question hung in the air. Throughout the evening, Kate anchored herself with thoughts of home. She spoke warmly of her children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, revealing their growing fascination with films and the behind-the-scenes magic of movie-making. It was a reminder that amid the crisis and the glamour, they were still parents, still a family trying to protect their children from the storm. The night was a masterclass in royal duty, but it was also a window into a marriage built to withstand sieges. They communicated without words, supported each other without grand gestures, and projected unity when the world expected them to fracture. Then, to understand the depth of that bond, one must travel back nearly 2 decades to a moment when it almost ended forever. It was 2007, and Prince William was a 25-year-old officer cadet, feeling the walls close in. He and Kate had been together for 5 years, ever since their university days at St. Andrews. They had lived together, grown together, and become the most famous young couple in the world. But William was terrified. He had seen his parents' marriage implode in the public eye. He had watched his father, Prince Charles, be pushed into a marriage that brought immense unhappiness. The thought of history repeating itself haunted him. Kate, sensing the stagnation, had issued a quiet ultimatum. She was not getting any younger, and she needed to know if their relationship had a future. And if William could not see marriage on the horizon, she needed to move on. The conversation, when it came, was brutally efficient. William picked up the phone, a 30-minute call that would define the worst day of Kate's young life. He told her they were on different pages. He needed space. He was unable to promise her marriage. And just like that, it was over. Kate was at work when the call came. According to royal historian Robert Lacey, she shut the door to her office and did not emerge for over an hour. When she finally opened it, she was single. The heartbreak was total. She had invested half a decade in a relationship with the most eligible and most complicated bachelor in the world, only to have it end via telephone. William, on the other hand, initially reacted with the relief of a caged bird set free. According to reports, and he went out that night and partied, shouting to friends, "I'm free!" But the euphoria was short-lived. The freedom he had craved quickly turned into a vast empty space where Kate used to be. He was, as a source later described to royal biographer Russell Myers, completely broken. The days that followed were a study in quiet desperation. William would later tell a courtier something that cut to the heart of his regret. Looking at the situation from the outside, he murmured, "At least she is free." It was a strange thing to say, a mix of selfless love and profound sorrow. He had let her go because he thought she deserved better, but the cost of that decision was his own happiness. It was Queen Elizabeth II who saw what her grandson could not. The monarch, ever pragmatic and perceptive, had always liked Kate, and she saw in the young woman from Berkshire the qualities of a future queen: dignity, patience, and an unshakable core. She invited William to a private Sunday lunch, not to scold him, but to check on him. What she found was a young man more than just crestfallen. He was adrift. Myers wrote that William was worried about whether he was throwing away the one constant in his life. The Queen, in her wisdom, offered a simple piece of advice that became the catalyst for everything that followed. The only certain path, she told him, is the one supported by faith. It was all she had to say. Emboldened, William picked up his phone again. This time he texted Kate, wondering if she would even reply. The initial exchanges were tentative and frosty. William said he missed her. Then he mentioned a party they were both scheduled to attend and asked if she would still be going. Kate agreed to talk, if only to clear the air. When they saw each other at the party, the chemistry was undeniable. The months apart had not extinguished their love. It had banked it like coals, waiting for oxygen. They peeled away from the crowd and spent hours locked in deep conversation. William's charm, his sincerity, and his regret worked their magic. They returned to the party as the cocktails flowed and the dance floor filled, and from that moment on, they only had eyes for each other. The reconciliation was the beginning of a new chapter, but the journey to the altar was still a long one. When they finally married on April 29, 2011, at Westminster Abbey, the world watched as a fairy tale unfolded. 2 billion people tuned in, making it the most streamed event in history at the time. Kate arrived at the Great West Door on her father's arm, her dress, a stunning Alexander McQueen creation with long lace sleeves, taking the world's breath away. The small diamond tiara she wore was lent to her by the Queen, a symbol of the acceptance the monarch had always shown her. As she walked down the aisle, the choir's voices soared into the ancient arches. It was impossible not to remember that the last time William had stood in this spot for a major family event, he was 15 years old, walking behind his mother's coffin. The contrast was stark. At the altar, when Kate finally reached him, their eyes met, and the tenderness of that gaze was a world away from the diffident, nervous meeting of William's parents 30 years prior. And there was a moment of genuine human drama when William slipped the ring onto Kate's finger. The band, fashioned from Welsh gold, the same used for the Queen Mother, the Queen, and Princess Diana, appeared to stick at her knuckle. For a split second, time froze. Then it slid into place, and a collective sigh of relief and affection rippled through the congregation. They had chosen their hymns carefully. "Guide Me, O Thou Great Redeemer," was the last hymn sung at Diana's funeral, a poignant tribute to the mother William had lost. As the newlyweds walked back down the aisle, they were accompanied by a fanfare commissioned by Kate for William, titled "Valiant and Brave," the motto of his RAF search and rescue squadron. When they emerged onto the balcony of Buckingham Palace, the roar of the crowd was deafening. They kissed once, then again, as the crowds below demanded curtain call after curtain call. The chemistry was undeniable. The doubts that had plagued their relationship, the breakup, the years of weighty Katie headlines, were swept away in that moment of shared joy. But fairy tales, even royal ones, are not immune to tragedy. The years that followed brought children, duty, and eventually a challenge that dwarfed all others. In 2024, the unthinkable happened. Kate was diagnosed with cancer. The Princess of Wales, the picture of health and grace, was fighting for her life behind palace doors. The BAFTAs of 2024 and 2025 came and went without her. William walked the red carpet alone, his smile tight, his eyes betraying the fear he carried. He was president of BAFTA, so he had to be there, but his heart was elsewhere. He was watching his wife battle a disease that threatened to take her from him and their 3 young children. When Kate finally completed her chemotherapy in September 2024, the relief was palpable. In a personal video message, she spoke of looking forward to being back at work. William, ever the optimist, hinted that 2025 might see her take on more duties. "I think hopefully Catherine will be doing a bit more next year," he said. "So we'll have some more trips maybe lined up." Their return to the BAFTAS together was a celebration of survival. And in a moment of pure, unscripted joy, the old playfulness resurfaced. Cameras captured a fleeting exchange as they posed for photographs. Kate, standing beside her husband, raised her hand, perhaps hoping to hold his. But William, distracted by conversation, missed the cue. What happened next was a split second of marital shorthand. Instead of pouting or withdrawing, Kate delivered a playful tap, a gentle pat on William's bottom. It was quick, barely perceptible, but the cameras caught it. William's reaction was instant. A blush crept up his neck, a surprised smile broke through his royal composure, and for a moment, they were not the Prince and Princess of Wales. They were just William and Kate, a husband and wife, sharing a private joke in a room full of strangers. Body language expert Judy James later analyzed the moment. She suggested the pat was part sexy, part playful reprimand for missing her cue. William's response, a cocked thumb and a relaxed posture, was a classic sign of a man entirely at ease with his wife and utterly charmed by her. The gesture, unusual for a senior royal couple known for their reserve, went viral. Fans were thrilled to see the genuine affection, the inside joke, the evidence that after nearly 2 decades of marriage, a near-fatal illness, and the weight of a crown, they still had fun together. From the silent, awkward entrance at the 2019 BAFTAS to the hushed, tension-filled red carpet of 2026, from the heartbreak of a 30-minute phone call to the joy of a balcony kiss watched by billions, the story of William and Kate is not a fairy tale without thorns. It is a story of 2 people who chose each other, not once, but many times. They chose each other in the quiet of a party when they decided to talk for hours and rekindle a love that had nearly burned out. They chose each other when the Queen offered wisdom, and they had the humility to accept it. And they chose each other in sickness and in health, standing on red carpets when the world was watching and sitting in hospital rooms when no one was. The royal entrance that ended in tears was not the one at the BAFTAs. It was the moment William realized he had let Kate go, the moment he said, "At least she is free," and meant it as a lament for his own loss. But from those tears, from that brokenness, they built something unshakable. They built a marriage that could withstand silence, scandal, sickness, and the suffocating glare of the public eye. And in every quiet whisper, every playful tap, every shared glance across a crowded room, they remind the world that behind the titles and the tiaras, they are simply 2 people who found their way back to each other and refused to let go.